Yisrael. This is Yoetz Aim, Yahweh Aim, Council of the People, and this is another episode of Phone Tap. And today's episode is called Surviving the Times. Surviving the Times. Today, we're going to be viewing a video and making commentary according to the Fair Use Act. So we don't own the copyrights to this video that we're reviewing today, but the link will be in the description below. In light of tabernacles, we're going to be discussing alternative ways to survive the beginning of sorrows. So we want to start this class off giving all praises to the Most High Yahweh, who the world may call Yahweh, Jehovah, our God, in the name of the only begotten Son, who the world may call Jesus Christ or Yeshua, but we call Yahushua Hamashiach. Okay? But we're going to talk about how best, or rather, we're going to talk about alternative ways on how we could survive the beginning of sorrows. The beginning of sorrows is just a warm up. It's the labor pains. It's the contractions before the birth. So now we're gonna check this video out. What I like about this video is an off-grid community, and I believe in the last days that, you know, as Israelites, there's nothing wrong with doing something like this. You know, being able to come together and have a community. You know, for the righteous brothers and sisters, this is an alternative. This is something you might want to think about in the last days, so that you could avoid going to a FEMA camp. If an earthquake happened in a land where you at that never happened before, at least you will be on your own land when it happens. You understand? At least you will have your own setup when it happens. At least you will be able to rebuild your own setup when it happens and be able to take care of yourself. All right. So this is just one of the many solutions that the scriptures provide. So we're going to check this video out. Also, many people think that when I speak about getting land, like that's the sole alternative. It's not. This video is actually about a community that's in an urban city. All right. So these people are not even living in the country, in the middle of nowhere. This is a group of Edomites who purchased a rundown apartment building, basically in the hood, you could say. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. The community look a little bit nice. So maybe it's like a suburban community, but it's an apartment building. They just purchased the building for real cheap, and then they renewed that building and made it into a whole off-grid community where they have their own food, they have their own water, they have their own electricity in the middle of the hood. So it's not just about getting land. For our people who live in the city, there are Black organizations. All right, some of my people who live in the heart of Babylon, in New York City, in Jersey, y'all know what I'm talking about. There are Black organizations who are doing projects very similar to this, and you might want to look them up in your neighborhoods. But this was a video that I came across that I felt was very interesting, piece by piece, how they put it together and how it works, that we could share this and go over scriptures and comment on it with the rest of the Israelite community who may be wanting to do this. You know, some of our people are going to be looking at this like, oh, it's a bunch of Edomites. Listen, all wisdom comes from the Most High. So yeah, they have the wisdom to do this, but they got it from the Most High, or rather the Most High gave it to them through whatever field of study that they went through to receive that knowledge. And the Most High could also give it to you.
Most apartments in Portland in general, most commercial properties, multifamily properties, the landscaping consists of the minimal, easy to maintain landscape.
Basically, usually just paved parking spaces.
And grass. It's basically, if it's not parking space, it's grass, or there's a sprinkling of ornamental shrubs. You know, they don't produce any food or anything. So, I mean, it's a tragedy. It's a kind of a lost opportunity. Eventually, we wanted to develop a community. So this seemed like a great place to try this out. It was a kind of a rundown apartment building back in 2007. Imagine 14 or 15 years ago, this was a giant parking lot, and there was just crew-cut grass on either side of that. So when we started, the grounds were totally bare. Okay, grass, we're talking grass, pavement, and a few ornamental shrubs that were pretty pathetic. No fruits or anything like that. So let's walk into the circular garden.
And you notice he pretty much he's doing what we should be doing as a nation. Small families coming together, trying to build a community together. And for a lot of Israelites, individualites who hate camps, I do understand the point of view that you may come from as far as wickedness you may see from certain groups and things of that sort, whatever group it may be, right? But you do also have to understand that the first step to doing something like this is Zephaniah 2 and 1, coming together before the unrighteous decree bring forth. So that's exactly what we should be, or this is exactly what we should be doing in the last days.
But it had a big space for gardens. So right here is the center. And what makes a circular garden so unique is that from this one point, you can irrigate a vast area very, very easily.
So pretty much this little group of family, whatever, that purchased this building together, they were able to convert that whole parking lot. Well, all of that greenery that you see right there, that all was the parking lot to the building with the tan roof. That all was just a parking lot. It was concrete. They was able to convert all of that into a community garden that could feed every living person that's in that apartment building.
This space is gardened by our group gardens program. We have about 20 families gardening together and growing things that you wouldn't normally grow in your own individual garden plot.
So did you buy?
So we bought it, yeah. So we worked with a bank. You got to convince a bank to put the money behind because it's a huge investment. This was $1.7 million. This was considered a kind of a high-risk investment, so they required a 30% down payment. Behind you, I wanted to point out that this is...
So I got to stop right here to comment on this because he was speaking about how they got it through the bank. And we understand that as Israelites, and when I say as Israelites, I'm not speaking about just as faith and knowing we Israel and teaching the Bible and stuff. I'm talking about like our people, blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, people who live in the ghettos and grow up poor. We know that many of us, we don't qualify for these type of loans. Deuteronomy 28 and 43, the stranger that is within thee shall get above thee very high. So it's crazy how you can have Edomites like this that live amongst us and they don't have much more money than us, all right? But they're able to start these nonprofit organizations and get these type of loans from the banks, whereas it would be a lot more difficult. Not that we can, but it'd be a lot more difficult for us. This is a prime example of the scriptures. It's saying the stranger that's within thee, all right, these Edomites and other heathens that live amongst us, they're able to rise up amongst us and become very high and pretty much have a kingdom in the midst of the hood. You understand? I know here in this video, it look more like they're in the suburbs though, but it's just amazing how they're able to do that. And it reads on, and thou shalt come down very low. And, we've, for the most part, our people are very low in the society. We don't have the money or the power to do things like this. All right. But there are a few of our people who are able to do it, who have the money, who have the resources. You understand? And all they needed was the vision, to invest in it. Well, now here's the vision. All right. You're going to have our people popping up in ghettos all over this country and around the world, starting to do things like this because they know the time is coming. All right. And then verse 44 says, and he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. So we know that we have to go to their banks. We have, but we do have black owned banks and unions that you could go to as well. All right. But for the most part, we know that we're going to them for them to lend to us, they'd be able to invest in things like this, where they probably won't have the faith to be able to lend to us like that. But the Most High, He will open doors. He will open doors. That's all I have to say.
Our intersection repair. So 2 years ago in August, we got together as a community. We closed the street at both ends, and then we painted this pollinator themed street painting. That's one of the fun community projects. Builds community. We learned a lot of our neighbors. We had a lot of our neighbors that we'd never met before. Really a great community building project. It percolates into the ground, into this gigantic aquifer under the city of Portland, and then we tap into that. So we're replenishing the water that falls on the property here by keeping it in place. And so we get about 150,000 gallons that land on the north side of the roof. There's another 150 from the south side. So the building itself probably contributes 300,000 gallons.
So they collect rainwater. That's how they're able to service enough water through the whole building. Now, some of y'all might be thinking, oh, that's not possible. Rainwater ain't going to be able to sustain a whole apartment building. All right. But they have a pretty awesome setup. And if you look at this video in its entirety on your own, you will see that it's very possible. The amount of water, I don't know if you heard what he said, how much water they actually take in. But if we rewind that, that's a lot of water that they're taking in from rainwater. All right. And if you're wise, you can make that water last for a very long time. We're going to go to Ecclesiasticus chapter 29, and we're going to start from verse 21. Ecclesiasticus chapter 29, verse 21. The chief thing for life is water and bread and clothing, and an house to cover shame. So, what are the main things you're going to be lacking in the beginning of sorrows? With some of the things that we read in Matthew 24, water. Whenever natural disasters happen, earthquakes in diverse places happen, one of the main necessities that's needed is water, right? It says bread. Bread represents food. After water, you need to put some fuel in your body. All right. So these are things that right here, when you build communities like this, you already taking two main necessities. You have two main necessities that you would need if a natural disaster ever happened in the last days. You could collect that rainwater. You could have your own food grown. And if you're following Pentecost, with the concept of Pentecost, you could preserve everything that you grow. And for when the famines is beginning to happen. And then it also read here in Ecclesiasticus chapter 29, verse 12, the chief thing for life is water, bread, and clothing, and an house to cover shame. And house to cover shame.
Things a little bit radical, like human manure composting our pee and poop. This is the basis for our fertility, and we figured your typical co-housing community would not necessarily go for that. This is what we call the additive for our compost toilets, So we're importing carbon from the city, which normally would go in the landfill. Believe it or not, some people put this in the landfill. And
now, some of our people, y'all don't have gardens and all that stuff, so y'all don't know what compost is. So for those who may not know what compost is, and I've learned this from my wife because I'm not a garden person myself. My green thumb is growing a little bit now that I've been learning from her. But a compost toilet, before we get into the toilet, compost is pretty much When you live off grid, or you homestead, or you gardening, in your backyard, even a lot of the waste that you would normally throw in the garbage, like eggshells, banana peels, natural things, only natural things, you throw pretty much in a big pile of dirt, like similar to what you see that he have right there. Um, and then that compost, pretty much after a year or two of piling up, it converts into fertilizer.
Toilet paper and additive are what we compost to create fertility and till.
They
So
don't use
And
toilet paper
everybody
because it's
has a
not
compost
natural.
building.
no. So there's probably about a dozen of us who use the ecological sanitation project.
So
Every
everybody
unit,
don't have a
generally
compost toilet,
speaking,
but
has a toilet in it. And some people will supplement with a bucket of wood chips and then a lovable loo next to it. And some people will supplement with a bucket of wood chips and then a lovable loo next to it.
I'm going to read um, Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 12. It says, thou shalt have a place also without the camp, meaning outside of the camp. So, you know, if we're remembering, if we're celebrating Feast of Tabernacles and you're trying to remember what it was like in the wilderness, right? Then you have to think about what our people would do in the wilderness. We would camp out in the wilderness. So outside of the camp, there had to be a place that you would go and defecate. All right. So there wasn't toilets. There wasn't the conveniences of a whole plumbing system and all of that stuff. Not even this, but we're looking at in this video was more of a convenience than the time era that we're reading about in this scripture. So there had to be a place outside of the camp, and it reads on, whither thou shalt go forth abroad, and thou shalt have a paddle, meaning a shovel, upon thy weapon, and it shall be when thou wilt case thyself abroad, thou shalt dig therewith, and shalt turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. So when it says when thou shalt case thyself, it's saying when you relieve yourself. It's saying when you take a crap, when you take a dunk. All right, the natural way of getting rid of feces is to bury it. And that's pretty much what you're doing with compost.
This is a typical one-bedroom unit right here. So
So
it's
this one
about
of the bedrooms that have
565
it.
square feet, consists of this living area and a kitchen, and there's our bedroom. And then we also have the bathroom in here. And what's unique about our bathroom is we have a compost toilet in it. This is normally where the toilet goes right here, this hole that's covered in the floor. We've removed that because we have our own compost toilet here. And this is what a compost toilet looks like. This is called a lovable loo.
Now that looked nasty to you in the last days. That looked nasty to you right now. And you figure, oh, in the last days, I'm not going to be doing that. But conditions will be so bad, you're going to be in a worse predicament like this. Worse than it.
It's a 5-gallon bucket that you pee and poop into. If you're willing to save your urine separately, that's even better, and that's what I do. So I have my own pee bottle here. I just pee into my bottle. And my wife pees into her bottle using this contraption. So you see there's a little bottle there and a funnel. So
And see, me and my wife, we lived off grid for almost 2 years, so we understand these type of things. All right. So believe it or not, I'm not speaking from the point of view of just a spectator. I actually lived it, and you see how you could just have a simple bucket like that, and you see how you have the funnel right there. That is a big convenience when you're off grid for women because they're not able to aim like us. All right, but they're able to sit down like it's an actual toilet and the pee go directly into the bottle. No aiming or nothing.
very easy actually to collect your pee separately from your poop. Okay.
And it doesn't smell at all.
There's no odors here. Okay. So what's amazing in between use is the wood chips that we use for covering. These are the wood chips. So after you pee or poop in here, then you cover with this. And wood chips are well known as an odor absorber.
So when you have a compost toilet, you're pretty much burying your shit. You're just transporting it from the toilet that you have, throwing it in the compost where it's going to be buried and then converted into a different form of nutrients for the ground. All right, that's how the earth revitalizes itself. Odor out. Um, these are just alternative ways, alternative things that we can do in the last days if we start preparing now. We don't want to be the virgins who didn't have enough oil and a lamps and the fire ran out. We want to be the ones who continue to keep the laws of God and try to remember what it was like in the wilderness to go outside of the camp and dig a hole and bury our crap. And even much later in history in the Judges, when we were still living no electricity, no real plumbing system everywhere, right? And people had to do this. This was what an outhouse is. It's pretty much the same concept. All right. You going digging a hole, throwing it. Compost is the same concept. You burying your crap into the dirt, and then eventually that dirt turns into fertilizer. All right. These are just different ways on how to survive as a community in these last days.
So these are our urine tanks. And this is 1,000 liters or 1 cubic meter of urine right here. So you can see it's about to right there. We fill them up to 90% and then we move to the next tank. So I'm just going to uncap this. And you can see here, we have a funnel and then a little tap with a rock on it to hold it. And I'm just going to dump this in very simply. Add my pee to the communal pee. And then after 6 months, then here's where you drain the urine out. And typically what we do is we attach a pipe here, and if you look over here, you can see that barrel down there, okay, with the hose coming out. So come on down here and I'll show you. This is what we do is we typically will attach a tank. In this case, that's attached to the urinal tank inside our urination station. So we drain that tank whenever it gets full into the barrel. And then inside the barrel, you can look over there, and we have a sump pump that's connected to the hose. And that hose goes up to our compost area. So we drain that tank into there, turn on the pump, and all the hose is pumped up to our kitchen compost area, and we distribute it into the bins there.
So you have enough space for all the pee?
Exactly, yeah, right. It takes us about 3 months to fill a tank. So after the tank is filled, then you mark that it's finished, and then you have 6 months from that point.
So after 6 months, the urine...
So this is unaged urine. That's why you can compost that. It's not a problem, but you wouldn't normally use that directly on plants, and this is just to follow the technical rules.
So in other words, the system that they got going is they have all of these big, large tanks that everybody put the urine in, and they have a dating system. And after 3 months, the urine converts to ammonia, right? And or whatever it converts to, whatever. But it's not like urine directly from you anymore, right? And they're able to use that to give nutrients. They have nutrients in it. So in other words, the 3 months is going through a cleansing, all right? And the only thing that's left is the nutrients that's good for plants. So based off of that system, that's what they water their plants with. Now, some of you guys are thinking, oh my goodness, pee and compost and doodle. You're going to have to grow up. You're going to have to grow up because you might be forced in a situation where you have to live like this. And if you don't follow the rules of these type of systems, then you will bring pestilence and disease and famine and other things that was prophesied about right into your community. All right, we're going to read a scripture real quick. This is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 17. For he have given me certain knowledge of the things that are, namely, to know how the world was made, in the operation of the elements, the alteration of the turning of the sun, and the change of seasons. So Solomon was given this knowledge, like the type of knowledge that this guy is given right now in the video. Solomon had this knowledge. He understood the operations of elements. All right. How your urine in 3 months could be converted to natural nutrients that you could use on your food, because dirt alone is not going to keep them healthy to grow. It's Luke chapter 6, verse 25. Woe unto you that are full. Like many of our people, we full. We trust in America because we are full in America. We ain't starving like Ethiopian children. We ain't in huts. We in civilization. We got running water. You could go to the poppy store. So many of our people are full, but it says, woe unto you that are full, for ye shall hunger. Why are you going to hunger? Because when these things start to come to pass and you looking at these systems like, oh my goodness, they're putting pee on their food and stuff like that, you're going to be hungry, because you're going to be the one that's going to be looking at that as that's not real wisdom and knowledge, even though Solomon had this type of knowledge. He understood how a sundial worked. He understood how the elements and how one element could convert to another. But if you want to deny it, then you're going to starve. And it says, for ye shall mourn and weep, because it's not just famine that you're going to have to prepare for it too. But that's another story. So we're going to close out. We're going to go to the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 3, and it reads, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple passeth on and are punished. So if you don't want to be taken by these things prophesied by Yahweh Shad in the beginning of the sorrows, the Bible says, you got to prepare. The prudent foresee the evil that's coming. And even more than foreseeing the evil that's coming, you have a Messiah that told you it was coming. Take it. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 18. Second Chronicles chapter 26, verse 10. And this is when one of the righteous kings, King Uzziah, was on the throne. This was something that he did, right? It reads, also he built towers in the desert and digged many wells. So in his days, he knew it was important to have water for the people. He dug wells, just like you see the people in this community did. All right, and we could come together and we could do the same thing too. Buy land, come together, build wells, so we know that, hey, we at least have water from the ground before the water from the ground run out. We at least have that while other people are going into FEMA camps for water. And it reads on, for he had much cattle. And you see that? We had our own cattle. So we didn't have to worry about if we was eating clone meat or not. Both in the low country and in the plains. Husbandmen, now when it says husbandmen, it ain't speaking about men who just married to their wives. These are men that are tillers of the ground. These are men who know how to farm and know how to move the land and even manipulate the land. It's called landscaping today. It said husbandmen also and vine dressers in the mountains. You know what the mountains is? The mountains is the wilderness. Every year for the Feast of Tabernacles, you got to live in the wilderness to remember what it was like. Why is the Lord doing that? Because a time is coming where you're going to be in the wilderness again. And you might have to live like this in secret. You will have to live like this in secret. Do you think King Uzziah had husbandmen, landscapers, and farmers growing things and making the land look beautiful in the mountains for nothing? There was a reason behind that. This is the book of First Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 28. So he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all they ever had. Salakia. And left all that ever they had in the city. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there. People started fleeing into the wilderness. Do you think a whole community of people was living in the wilderness in a savage manner? No. They had to create systems like this so that people didn't jump up and get sick because there's so much feces and urine laying around, and the population is growing, and now they're getting closer to the outer areas where everybody take a crap at. They had to live like this in secret because afflictions increased. Verse 31. Now when it was told the king, servants, and the host that was in Jerusalem in the city of David, that certain men who had broken the king's commandment, right? Like in the last days, they're going to try to get you to accept the mark of the beast. If you don't accept the mark of the beast, how are you going to eat? Water, shelter. You won't have any of that because you haven't accepted the mark, right? So how are you going to survive during that time living like this? You're going to have to break the king's covenant. So it said, who had broken the king's commandment were going down into the secret places of the wilderness.
Yeah. Muchos gracias if you been paying attention. They shooting us, yes, they fell back from the lynching. Her naked body got me distracted.
But the problem is, Israel, you don't know who your God is, and you don't know who your neighbor is. So if you don't know who your God is and you don't know who your neighbor is, then we gotta teach you who your neighbor is. We gotta teach you who your God is. Because for years, you've been going to church looking at Renaissance pictures of a big white man looking like Santa Claus coming out of the sky. And you thought that that was God. And guess what? Color didn't matter back then, right? But the moment when I say Jesus Christ is a black man, then color matters. And he can be any color he wants. Why? Because I said he a black man?
Notification go off, I'll ignore them again. Too busy fighting at home. They gonna fight for my own, standing by so long. When all you got is these poems, got it. Thought it to a launch, but my Facebook friend. Notification go off, I'll ignore them again. Too busy fighting at home.